Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Attollo's Professional Development Series. My name is Emily, and I'm our Director of Programs for 11th grade. And today I have with me Dario Anaya, a student at New York University and the founder of Pupil.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Awesome. So I guess just to kick us off, where are you from, and what were some of your hobbies growing up?
Well, so I say the Chicago area, but I originally grew up in Gary, Indiana. So like if you like the Jacksons, like the Jackson Five, they grew up in Gary.
Very nice.
So I grew up like I think 15, 20 minutes away from there. And I more so say Chicago just because a lot of people don't know about Gary, but Gary has a really rich history. It used to be really known for the steel mills. Like I said, the Jacksons are from there, and it was a very wealthy town. But growing up, by the time I was born, I'm an '03 baby, it was considered one of the worst cities in the U.S. So I normally like to kind of explain that to people in terms of the history of it.
Absolutely. And what were some of your hobbies growing up?
Well, so it's interesting. Like in terms of elementary through middle school through high school, in elementary I was the kid that would make the rubber band bracelets that were really popular.
Yes, the rainbow loom.
Exactly. And so I'd put them on a piece of paper, tape them, and then sell them to classmates.
Iconic.
As like customs.
Yep.
And then in middle school, it was like selling bags of Takis and like gum. And that's how I learned supply and demand and how I could kind of see how much I could charge. And then in high school, it led to like creating projects for my high school to get better recruitment. And then eventually it led into me making Pupil.
Very cool. You remind me of one of our students who we always ask them like, oh, do you have any jobs right now? And mind you, they're junior, seniors in high school. He starts listing things starting from elementary school. And I was like, okay, we've got an entrepreneur on our hands. Very cool. So you mentioned Pupil a little bit. I would love for you to explain what Pupil is for those who might not know.
Yeah, so Pupil is an identity-driven college guidance platform. Essentially what we do is we match high school students with college mentors based off their shared backgrounds and interests, and then we pair that with AI now with a new feature that we have, which is called MentorGPT. So imagine having like a big sibling at any university of your interest with 24/7 accessible guidance. It's trained off of actual proprietary data from college students, so it gives you a direct answer, a quote from that student, and a citation of what type of student gave you that answer.
Very cool. MentorGPT, I like it. Thinking back to when you were doing the college application process, what did you feel like you were missing? And in a way, does Pupil fill any of those gaps?
Yeah, so on the train right here, I was really trying to think about what would be the answer to that. I think it might have been, I could say mentors because that's the whole thing of what we do with Pupil, but I think I had the right mentors who got me to this point because of the starting of it. I think it was more so maybe like the self-confidence of getting into a really good school. So it's not more so like what did I need for the application process, but like what did I need going through the process. And I think that was just the confidence, right? Like I was a troublemaker and class clown. I didn't have good grades. So if you were to compare me with like the average NYU kid, we do not look the same at all. So I think for me, what it was missing is like the confidence of that I do in fact have a potential spot at a school like that.
Speaking of NYU and kind of the profile of the student who goes there, what drew you to NYU and why did you ultimately decide to apply if you're saying that you don't see yourself as the average NYU student in the application pool?
So that was the reason why. It's because I didn't see myself as like the average student, which is what made it more unique and interesting. So NYU, obviously being in the big city, like it's amazing both for like social and work life and everything. But NYU has a really, really rich history of entrepreneurship. So if you think about like Twitter, Jack Dorsey went to NYU. I mean, he did drop out, but like it's the fact that he went there. If you think about Square came out of NYU. Etsy came out of NYU, the Chainsmokers, so if you like music, they came out of NYU. They also have now a VC firm. So like there is a lot of entrepreneurship at NYU. It's just not as known. We're more so known for like either Tisch, which is great, or for Stern, which is like more of your traditional business, but not necessarily entrepreneurship.
Interesting.
So the first big thing was entrepreneurship. The second thing is, out of all the universities, and I knew all the deans at all the big schools, you name like the Harvards, the Stanfords, I knew people there. And I would have meetings with them about Pupil when I first started. But the people who would spend the most time with me and take me the most serious was NYU. They would actually take things into real, like, actionable things. And then the third thing was when I was a junior applying to pre-college programs, NYU was the most, selective one that gave me a shot. All the other ones didn't give me a shot. So when it came to applying to NYU and then getting in, that was a very big deal for me. It felt like I already had a pre-existing community there. I knew the right people. And of course, I'm an innovation fellow at the Entrepreneurship Center. And so I've known them since I was a junior. And the director would spend time with me over Zoom all the way back home in Gary.
That's amazing.
So NYU, the reasoning why is because of how open it was and welcoming they were to me, especially, again, me not being that traditional student.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of different things. One thing I want to touch on is you started Pupil while you were still in high school.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling, because it's a platform where you're connecting current college students with high school students going through the process. How did you find these college students? And you kind of touched on a little bit about connecting with these different universities, but I just want to walk me back to the moment and how you decided to kind of create this and what your strategy was, especially being all the way in Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, no, so Pupil's based off of the process of how I did it. So when I learned what LinkedIn was, what I would do is, for those who don't know that you can do this, whenever you go on LinkedIn and you go on a page, you can look up the universities, obviously. So I would go on Harvard or NYU, and when you go on there, you obviously can see all the people that have it on their accounts, but you can do the year that they graduate, and you can do specific majors or titles. So for me at the time, I was interested in politics, or if I was interested in law school, I would just put in the filters, and then I'd find all the people I want. I'd spam the hell out of it, and I had a template message. And I'd use this blanket message, it would work. I'd do different iterations, so I figured out the one that would always get a yes to getting someone to get on a call with me. And then I just started building out my network that way. And then it led into finding a few people who would stick around longer as actual mentors for me, and they would help me with my college apps, or if it was starting Pupil. So Pupil stemmed because of that experience with LinkedIn, but also because of a dean at the high school that I went to. So I was a troublemaker class clown. I went to a private school. I didn't have the money to afford it, so I went there on aid. And I didn't pass the entrance exam to get in. So I found my way into the dean's office before that result came out. And I snuck in there and I was like, can you let me in? And he essentially said, your grades are shit, why should I let you in? And so we went back and forth for an hour, and he ended up letting me in on academic probation. I struggled immediately because I wasn't used to that rigor, but he picked up on that immediately and became a mentor for me. So by the time I graduated, I was one of the best students there. That's why I created Pupil, which is to help other students discover their untapped potential like my mentors did for me. So it was pairing that experience of understanding how to work LinkedIn to my advantage, plus that experience of that mentor helping me understand what I was capable of, which is what created the first idea of Pupil, which was a high school version of a LinkedIn. So you could find clubs, you could find mentors, and you could get internship opportunities.
That is such a heartwarming story. As we start working with our students their junior year of high school, and I personally toggle between, are we starting too late with them, or are we starting at the right point? And I think there's pros and cons to when we do begin working with them. And what I'm hearing from your story is you can start off your high school career not necessarily performing the best academically and still make enough change throughout your time that you can land at a school like NYU. So I really appreciate you sharing that part of your story, as I know that will really resonate with a handful of our students, if not almost all of them. So it sounds like, your mentorship experience and navigating LinkedIn, the pros and cons, is what led you to create Pupil. But how did you find time to be a founder while being a student in high school, while going through the college application process? And how do you do it? Yeah,
well, so in high school, I always got in trouble, obviously. So the teachers weren't the biggest fans of me. I mean, so here's a funny example. I had an entrepreneurship class. And obviously me being into entrepreneurship, you would assume I liked the class. I actually did not, because in my opinion, teaching is not teaching from a textbook, right? That's very boring. I can do that by myself. And so this teacher would always do that. And so I would get the work done ahead of time. It was super simple stuff. And I would just go crazy on my laptop sending out emails to professors or to whoever. So that's how I made time in high school, is I was just doing it during classes. And then there's this one person who I call my bestie. She's actually one of the original alum for my high school, because the school was founded in I think 1959.
Well,
and so she was one of the originals, and so we became really close because she worked with a lot of alum stuff, and she would let me use her office after school. And so that became my little office where I would do work after practice. And then in college, the answer kind of changes a little bit because this is what I advise like founders now. Like one of my best friends asked me this the other day when we were walking to our dorm, which was like, how do you do it? And so my answer is kind of very sobering, which is there's days where you choose to be a great founder and a terrible student, and a terrible founder and a great student. And so that answer of which one you choose is entirely up to you. It depends on, I guess, how confident and secure you feel in like your potential outcomes. For me, I think because I was very fortunate to learn what networking was and to do some of the things I've done since then, I have a sense of certain security in terms of I know if this fails, I can go on to the next really exciting project and build something or work on something. And so I say that because I think a lot of students don't always have that opportunity, which is why it's important to have mentors at the different stages as early as you can so that you eventually can have that optionality.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. And it's making me think a lot about how you as an individual might not be able to do it all. And so it sounds like when this, what is the word? When this project first started, you leaned on different mentors to help support, from advice to even giving you the space to be able to work. I'm curious, do you ever find yourself realizing like, I'm not good at this one part of the business, I need to lean on someone else? And if so, how have you found those people in your network? Like, I'm thinking, if I were to start a business right now, I would definitely need some help in the finance area and just like managing that. But when it comes to project management, put me in. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts around that.
Well, you kind of did the vice versa. I'm not into the whole operations and project management of things. I'm more so like doing the business and the development of things. So one of the things I do now is I host office hours with like founders in the undergraduate and graduate schools at NYU. And so like this was a very common question where they ask about co-founders and like, should I have a co-founder? Because some of our programs highly encourage that you have co-founders. So if I was to answer in that sense, I think it's important to have someone in things that you don't do well in, like a yin and yang, right? So for me, I've had past partners where they were really good at doing operations and tech, and I was really good at doing the opposite. So I think you need two people sometimes in projects with companies so that you can fill in those different spaces. So my favorite thing to do, which is a very overly used thing to say, but it's a very true thing, is I'm very happy that all my team is much more smarter than I am because they can do things way better than what I could. So
very cool. And what does your team look like right now?
Yeah, well, so it's a very diverse team, which is what I love. So the first thing is like we have Priyanka. She went to Cornell. She's one of our engineers.
Go Big Red, everyone.
I remember you went to Cornell, yeah. We have Haley, who actually was the valedictorian of my high school class. Mind you, I was at the bottom of my class. She's our lead engineer. She's the one building the Mentor GPT. She's also a senior at Stanford. And we just brought on someone, Daniela, who's at Columbia, and who's actually leading one of our new initiatives to build out more of the Mentor GPT in terms of like the data that we collect.
I love that you have people not only from different areas of expertise, but also different ends of the country. And so it's really, really collaborative, which is phenomenal.
The other important thing is when we hire people, I normally will hire people that have a lived experience in terms of what we do. So most of them are first and low-income students.
What? Okay, so many questions. I guess I'm thinking a lot about the overlap right now between people and what you do and parts of what our program here at Attollo does. And so you're obviously here today to speak with us, but you've been connected with this organization before. How did you first hear about Attollo, and what has inspired you to stay connected with us?
Well, as Leo may or may not remember, when I was a freshman, I was doing a crazy amount of outreach to do pilots with great organizations like this one, which were either in like the youth mentorship space, the college prep space, things like that. And so I actually remember doing our first meeting in the pool room in my freshman dorm on the second floor when we were chatting and when we got to finally work with Attollo. So I found them through just looking up great organizations that were doing really well. Specifically, I used like GuideStar, which is like a huge database of great nonprofits. That's how I came across Attollo. And then after speaking with Leo, doing pilots with you guys, and then being here this past summer for one of your new HQ opening, it further immersed me into like understanding more about the community and the culture here. So I really love what Attollo does, especially with its students. Every student I've met does impress me very much. And it's not to say that like it's hard to impress me, but there's not many instances where I'll meet a student and I'm like, all right, who trained you? Like, who was your mentor? That's what's more unique. And so when I meet Attollo students, that's what I think about. So that's why I like Attollo a lot, is how they prepare their students in terms of how they interact with other people who really do understand and are really into mentorship.
Awesome. That makes me feel great because I know you met some of my students and I'm their mentor. But nonetheless, on the topic of students, what advice would you give to our students who might be interested in creating something while they're currently a student, very similar to your path?
Well, so there's two types of founders. The first one is someone who builds something based off of lived experience. So I did what I have with Pupil based off my own personal experiences. And then there's those who will look for a problem just to solve. So like a random one could be is a good amount of us probably use ChatGPT, and then we realize that it uses fresh water to cool down its systems, which can create environmental issues. So I always suggest to some high school students that I mentor and some of the college students in the programs, try that out, see if you can find a solution for that, because I'm sure that's going to be a big problem that someone's going to look at in the next 5 years. So for advice for like students who are thinking about it is figure out which one you want to fit into. It's completely applicable to be either one, but the one that, in my opinion, that I've noticed lasts the longest is the one who has a personal touch, so the lived experience of a founder. Aside from that, it's really kind of digging at the why consistently. So I'll meet founders who will say, oh, I have this cool idea and I want to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, well, why? Well, because I noticed it. Okay, you noticed it, but like, did the other people that you're trying to solve it for actually also acknowledge it, or is this just you acknowledging it? So it's consistently understanding the why behind what you're doing and if it's something valid or not.
Would you say the why can change and evolve?
Yeah, I mean, for us, again, we wanted to be a high school version of LinkedIn, and we wanted to sell to nonprofits, to high schools, and to corporates. And then it's shifted to where we're directly to families now, and we're still accessible. So I think it's fine to consistently shift to do models to find the fastest way to grow and be efficient.
Absolutely. If you were to summarize your why statement right now, what would you say?
Well, I think it's just the idea of like discovering your untapped potential says a lot just with a few words. It's like you never really understand what a student is capable of until you see that like ah moment in them when you help them finally realize like, oh, I could do X, Y, Z, or oh, this is how that actually works. And I think especially being from where I grew up, like I'll meet a lot of really promising kids, but like for example, Notre Dame, one of the best universities in the country, is only like an hour away, but half those kids don't, one, know about Notre Dame to the extent of its academic rigor, and two, will never get into Notre Dame. The reasoning why is they don't have that support. Why? Because no one helped them understand what they were capable of. So our why statement and my personal one is really helping that kid understand their potential.
Untapped potential. Awesome. Thank you so much. I do want to make sure that we hear from questions in the audience, so whoever would like to start.
I'd love to hear about like the technology component of Pupil and how it's evolved over time. And how it's evolved to better serve students and what you've learned over time.
Yeah, so initially starting off, it was just like matching high school kids with, the idea was to be with college mentors and professors. And then we figured out, well, professors don't have a lot of time. And then the second thing is like, well, how do you match them efficiently? So like you could just say, if I want to go to Purdue, match me with a Purdue kid, and like that's great, but students are more likely to, one, go to a school where they see someone like them, and two, more likely to succeed somewhere where they can really relate to somebody. And so that's then how we created like our algorithm, which was really a filter. So let's say I want to go to NYU, I want to study econ, I want to work in finance, and I want a Latino mentor who's LGBTQIA+. I'll find that exact person at NYU and other universities of my interest. So then that's how we got it to where it's identity-driven matching. So that was the really big thing there, was making sure that kids really related to it. Because what we found out through our research and our interviews is that kids want someone who is both relatable and experience-based, right? So yeah, we relate, but have you gone down the same path that I want to go down? So that was really important. Then shifting it to thinking about how we could be more scalable is because matching with people is great, but it's really hard to do in terms of making it scalable because it's human-based, right? It's intensive. So then that's when we created over the summer the Mentor GPT, which is the idea of having an accessible mentor 24/7, just by sending in whatever question you wanted. It could be about identity, community, the best food on whatever campus. and it gives you that direct answer from an actual student at that institution, which is what's then integrated back into that live mentorship matching. So over time, what we figured out was, all right, we understand that the human touch is important, but also having accessible information is also really important to a scalable extent. So I don't know if that answer directly got to it, but for us it was making sure that we were able to match people based off of what they were really looking for, so the identity-driven part, and then now making that scalable.
I mean, I'm hearing something which directly relates to a phrase we often use here at Attollo, which is, you cannot be what you cannot see. And it sounds like your platform is able to do that by providing that personal connection with a real lived experience, the identity base. And to your point, being able to make it scalable and increase access, that's where the technology component comes in to fill the gap until you're able to really connect with someone. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other questions? Seb?
So, being so young and really very successful, are there ever times where like you're either doing like meetings with people who are older and you feel like they don't take you seriously, even though you kind of have like all of your successes and everything to show, but just because of age, you feel like it's just not really being taken as seriously as it should be? And does that fuel you, or does it make you feel just a little discouraged, or how do you kind of cope with that, or do you use it as motivation?
I think I'm very fortunate. So I am 22. Most people that meet me think I'm a little older just because of the beard part. But yeah, I'm 22. I more so get entertained by it, and that's come to be one of my favorite words. So I'll kind of laugh at it internally, and then I kind of go on with my day. The reasoning why is, I was explaining this to a group of students this past summer at this one summit in the city. So you can't necessarily, and don't get this mixed up between the idea of like confidence and cockiness, you can't necessarily question me based off of who I already know and what I've already learned. So when someone questions my relevance in a meeting, it's more so like, well, how do you even think in the first place I got in the meeting with you, right? And then it's like, well, if I show you my pitch deck, you already see the team that we have, and you already see the advisors that we have. It's very clear that you can't get to these people very easily. So if someone is to question me or laugh at me in a meeting in that sense, I don't really care, because like I'll continue to be well, and I already know I'll be successful. And we continue to be. So I think being young and being questioned is more of a compliment to a certain extent, because it's really, to some people, not imaginable. But fortunately, I think with like the new things that we have in society, like with platforms like a LinkedIn, where you can network with anyone, or learning how to do a really good like email to get yeses immediately, is really important. So for me, I don't really, it doesn't really bother me. There's other things that will fuel me, but those meetings don't really fuel me.
Cool. Other questions? Sam?
Yeah, so what are some like next steps you guys are planning to take as a company? Are you guys maybe thinking to like integrate a application portal where you can directly apply to the company, or just any other features you guys plan on adding?
Yeah, well, so the newest and latest one is the Mentor GPT. So that one is what we're really focused on. And the way that we plan on doing that is we have a few milestones set for this fall, and ideally we'll accomplish them so that by this spring/end of summer, we'll raise our pre-seed round. We'll have the capital for the next 24 months to build, and then we'll be on track to continue going further in terms of our access to thousands of families.
Wow. Karen?
You said that you were kind of like the troublemaker in school. You weren't really high achieving, and I really resonate with that. And you gave teachers maybe a hard time. Do you think that, well, I assume those teachers maybe didn't see that untapped potential in you. I assume maybe some of your peers didn't see that untapped potential. Did that affect you? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I think there's like two instances. The first one is, so I used to have this one teacher who, she would come in like every week and she would talk to us about college stuff. And she didn't think I could get into a school like NYU, let alone into her alma mater, which is Loyola in Chicago. Mind you, I ended up getting offered a full ride to Loyola. So that was the first big thing, is teachers didn't really take me serious because they saw my transcripts. The second one is when I got into NYU, all the seniors are getting excited about what schools they go into. And the school I went to, like most of the kids have really good grades. Mind you, again, because I had the bad grades, they were confused. So when I was the only one out of my school that got accepted into NYU, and everyone else was like how did he get in? Like, why does he think he's hot shit, et cetera, et cetera. That one really entertained me because I was like, earlier you were just congratulating me and now you're being upset that I got into the school that denied you because you're not interesting. That was a really interesting thing to me. And then the last thing, I'll add a third point, is when I got into NYU and I went to this one English teacher who didn't like my writing. She essentially was saying I was a bad writer. And I said, I got into NYU. Mind you, I was with someone who's on my team now, but they got into Stanford. And she believed her who got into Stanford, but she didn't believe that I got into NYU in front of us. And I was like, no, I got in. She's like, well, what do you mean? Well, what do you mean, what do I mean? I just showed you the email. So if I could go back to the point you brought up earlier, those are the moments where I'm more so fueled because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you think's going on here? Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
No.
That's actually hilarious. Bemnet and then Seb again.
So I guess I'm curious, like in regards to like your application process, like what steps did you take? What did it look like? How was your personal statement? Like what did it like encompass to make you stand out in a way that you went to end?
Yeah, well, it kind of starts like sophomore year. I was like really heavy into like making sure I could, because here's the thing, I knew I didn't have the grades to get into this really good school, so I had to figure out a way to stand out, which was I was, as a sophomore/junior, I would do outreach to hundreds of professors at all the really schools that we all think of, and I would ask if I could do research for them. So I had one of my mentors teach me how to make an email template to professors and then how to kind of get into research. So the first school was Princeton. I sent out probably like, 100 emails. One of them replied because one of the students who took his class was one of my mentors and made an intro. So that professor took me on. Then that led into another position. I got to do research at Harvard, and then fast forward, it was at MIT. So the first thing was I had to start building out my outside extracurriculars aside from like saying I was a captain of whatever team. Mm-hmm. I had to be more interesting than that. So it was doing research. The second thing was then looking into the pre-college programs. Mm-hmm. So I'm an alum of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation's like Youth Awardees program for entrepreneurship, for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute for Latinos who want to do Ready to Lead programs, so in politics. I would get into those programs. And then come up into senior year, I was already doing Pupil, I was doing research, I was in some of these programs. It was then kind of writing about that. So with Pupil and my personal essay, it was about universities like these essays, which is like a phoenix rising from a pile of ashes. I only learned that until I was in the NYU Cali program when our guest lecturer was the Dean of Admissions at Columbia. Mm. And when she told us that, I was really surprised. Well, not surprised, but I was like, oh wait, like they just told us something that many people don't know this. And so when I used it in my own essay, which was talking about, if I kind of briefly remember the first sentence, but it's like something along the lines of, I never knew that I would eventually try to create something to solve the educational system that I failed in, right? And so it's starting off with the hook story of the phoenix rising from the pile of ashes. You go through the downfalls, right? And universities, they don't really care for the sob story. Like everyone does a sob story. But what they really care about is you go through the hard times, you then kind of have your come up. That's great. But when you have your climax and you solved it for yourself, did you just solve it for yourself, or did you turn around and try to figure out another way to solve it for other people? Mm. So for me, it was going through my struggles, explaining how I came about it, and then how I created Pupil to then help the next group. And then that next group helped that next group. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it was doing the outside things, hustling that way to make sure that I could seem like, really interesting and make sure that I was learning things aside from like sitting in a class. And then getting into those pre-college programs, and then writing about that phoenix rising from a pile of ashes type of story.
Thank you for emphasizing the holistic process of the college application process. I don't think our students quite realize that right off the cusp, that it's not just your transcript, it's the things that you do outside of school, the things that you do for your community, and most importantly, how you share your story. And I also really appreciate your emphasis on not just the impact that you were able to have on yourself or create for yourself, but the impact that you would have on others. Yeah, that's awesome. Sebastian and then Leo.
So like from what we heard, like you sound very much of a master networker. And I think like it goes to the point like it's great. It's always, I feel like, a lot easier to create a connection, but it's hard to sustain and keep it. So I'm just wondering, how do you navigate being, what you said, like you're full-time student, full-time founder, but then also keeping that circle around you and keeping sure that you still have those connections and not like you just kind of ghosted or something. You kind of fell off the face of the earth to those people.
Well, it kind of almost goes into like, how do you like keep a mentor to a certain extent? So when you get on a call with someone and they give you advice, because normally that's the first reason why they'll be open to it, is normally people who are successful are at the next stage that you eventually want to be at, and because you're young, they want to give you that time because they see a potential in you. And they also want to claim the opportunity to be like, I helped that really successful kid when he was really young. So the first thing is like using your age to your advantage. There's like a funny story that I like to tell people. When I was a senior, again, I was doing the whole networking thing. So I was on a call with like a dean at Stanford at one time. And during the Zoom, he was like, Dario, you're cute. I was like, what? What do you mean I'm cute? He's like, well, you're young and you're dumb, and people like me want to help you because we want to teach you stuff. And use that to your advantage because you're only 20 for so long. So that was the first thing, using your age. The second thing is when someone gives you advice, and I even do this now with my own personal mentees I take on very seriously, is if I give you advice and if my mentors give me advice and I didn't take that into action so that by the next time I talk with them, they didn't see a result from it, you've wasted not only my time, but I then waste their time. And people take that really serious, especially if you can get those big hitters on a call with you, they take that very seriously. So like there's one mentor that I have now who I'm trying to become a protege of, and he has $1 billion company. His mentor had $1 billion company. Some of you probably have it in your home, which is Ringdoor. That was that's who his mentor is, the guy that founded that company. So you can imagine when I go on meetings with him, every time we talk, I have to have my follow-ups. I have to have the metrics that we talked about before that call, what I said I was going to accomplish. So the way that you continue to keep these relationships with these people, whether or not you're a student or you're really, really busy, is making sure that you take in what you're asking them, so their answers, and actually using it, applying it, and then showing them what occurred out of it. Because then they can see that you're taking them serious. And normally if it's the right advice that they're giving you, they'll also notice that now you're progressing. So that's how I would kind of continue to have those people in my circles. Aside from that is the casual update's great too. They also realize that like you being very ambitious, they're very ambitious. There's moments where you're not always gonna have a time to want to talk to them, but it's also a thing that you don't always, and I learned this when I was a freshman in college, because one of my mentors was like, you don't gotta do like every like few week catch-ups with me. Like, it's okay, like you can send me an update in a few months when you've done some other good work, you know what I mean? So you don't feel the pressure to consistently call someone like every other 2 weeks, but do feel the pressure of making sure that you keep showing some progress every time you do talk to them.
All right, we'll do Bemna and then our guest in the back, and then I'll close out.
So I'm curious, you manage so much, and so I'm curious like how you manage your stress and also how you just stay present and engaged, because I know like when you're managing so much, it can be hard to actually be present in the moment, but with the work you do, it's really important to be present. So I'm curious on how you kind of like balance that.
Well, Leo, on the way coming up here, we were chatting, and I have this big black bag that I carry with me. It's my gym bag. So I go to the gym every morning. I wake up very early, so I wake up around 4. The gym opens at 5:30. So I'll use the minutes I have before that getting ready, but also like if I'll reply to email. Then I do my gym. I'm really into intense cardio, brain stimulation early in the morning. It also kind of like takes down some of my ADHD, stretch out in the steam room, and then like get to class or get to my working space where I'll do meetings or whatever. That's kind of how I stay sane, is really the gym part. I think the second thing, and I was just talking about this with one of my really good friends now, is I like going on endless random walks in the city. So it's like I don't have a direct destination. I'm just like walking and looking at things of what the city has. So I have certain parks that I really like being in. Those are my two big things. I think the last thing is I do like looking at art, so I'll kind of just think about it. Art's somewhat philosophical. So it would just be the gym, the random walks, and like the art is what keeps me sane. And I didn't discover that it was those three big things until I had burnout a few years ago, which is like something new, and why like earlier when it comes to like how would you advise students who want to be founders, that kind of like sobering answer of like there's days where you have to choose being a good founder and days where you have to choose being a bad founder, vice versa, all that stuff. So it didn't take me to understand that until I went through those moments to then realize how I can solve those moments.
Our last
that
question.
and Google Calendar. I love Google Calendar.
Yeah.
We love a calendar. Love a calendar. Awesome. Just to close us off, this conversation really has me thinking about something that will be coming up for us here at Attollo. So we start working with our students their junior year in our very early morning 6-week rite of passage recruitment program. And right around this time, actually starting on Monday, we'll have one-on-one meetings with them. So we're working with them in a cohort of anywhere from 16 to 32 students, but having that one-on-one time to really get to know them. And a question that I love that we ask, that I want to ask you, is how would you like to be described in 10 years?
Well, I like being, so I think goofy is like one of my favorite words to use.
Love it.
And I like being very silly. So I think if I could be described as like goofy, ambitious, and comfy, I think that would be my big three. So like, he was very goofy, so he always, made people laugh. Ambitious is pretty straightforward. He always got it done, figured out a way to get it done. And comfy is in the sense of like, he was comfortable in any room he walked in, right? I think that would be my big three.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for imparting some wisdom onto all of us. I know I definitely walked away with a lot of good nuggets, so thank you.
Thank you so much.